So after completing the fuel upgrade kit on the Honda S660, we're just about ready to start removing the original turbo and replace it with this new HKS GT3. Disconnect the battery once again. Remove the airbox. Now this one doesn't appear to be the original airbox, as there's a cone filter under this, so your car may differ slightly to this, and this was quite awkward to remove. Remove the air supply to the exhaust cooling. Now the instructions may have been given slightly in the wrong order, as there's a metal guard that makes it quite difficult to remove the exhaust cooling duct, which is removed in a later step, so it may make sense to remove the metal guard, which you can see being bent slightly here, before removing the cooling duct. This is the PCV that we need to remove, and this is quite awkward because this hose is very difficult to remove, and there is a 10mm bolt quite obscured under the fitting, so you may need to figure out your own plan of attack for this part. Still struggling with it. I got some of the other components out of the way, so I removed the engine cover and also the strut for holding the bonnet up, as this was getting quite inconvenient. All the bolts shown are 10mm, and you'll have to work on your own order of removing these components based on the tools that you have, as certain tools won't fit in some places, and the order of the component removal makes a difference. I've now got access to the 10mm bolt holding the PCV in place. Remove all the components you can see here, including all the vacuum hoses. It may help to take a photo before removing them so you know where they go back to. However, there are good quality diagrams in the instructions. Now, in order to remove the heat shield for the cat, obviously we already have the intercooler removed from the previous job. We need to disconnect the top cat sensor and the bolts on the manifold, 2 bolts and 1 nut, are all 10mm as well. The hose clips are incredibly unforgiving, so do watch your hands. I ended up with at least 6 cuts on my hands. Got the cooling hose clamped off to limit the loss of fluid, ready to remove from the pipe at the back. Now, I didn't notice initially, but there are 2 bolts and 2 nuts on the cat to the turbo. The other one is lower down. Now, underneath the car, remove the bolts holding the downpipe to the cat. Now, to give me a bit more wiggle room, I did disconnect the bolts on the other side of the downpipe so that it could be moved further out of the way. disconnects the oil return, the two 10mm bolts there. And now remove the oil feed attachment, which is another 10mm. Undo the oil feed at the top as well. Now we have one bolt and two nuts holding the turbo to the engine. And with the coolant and oil feeds both removed, we now have the ability to remove the turbo. Now here we have the whole turbo removed completely. Now, contrary to the instructions, I've already left the components that we need to remove from the original turbo on the car, or remove them already. So we can unbag the new turbo. Now we need to fit the studs in the correct positions for the new turbo, which we can see in the instructions, but we can also place it against the original turbo and see exactly where they need to go. Now it's the short side of the new studs that goes into the turbo and the long part that sticks out. It may help to use a pair of pliers on the part that isn't threaded. Tighten the studs to the turbo. Now, prior to fitting, we are lubricating the turbine, so we are adding oil to the oil return while turning the turbine round manually, just making sure that we've got some lubrication in there ready for the first start. And get all the new gaskets ready to fit when replacing the turbo. So I've already fitted the new gasket on the block. Don't forget to replace the gaskets for the manifolds, the oil return, the oil feed. There are two copper washers for the oil feed at the top and a rubber meshed O-ring for the bottom. Now this is the part not to get mixed up with. The feed for the turbo has a copper washer on each side. Now I have all the turbo and airbox refitted to the car, I can take a look at this new intake that will be going to the upgraded intercooler. Now the top intake obviously goes in the same position as the original one, but we have a pipe adding additional air supply from the lower vent on the side of the car. Now this requires the removal of the wheel and the wheel arch liner. So this is where the lower intake will be fitted and joining with the upper one. There are two pieces of sticky back foam on the sides of the intake, so it may be beneficial to clean behind the wing before fitting this, and you'll also be fitting a bolt through the hole already drilled in the intake. Now, to protect the original components of the car, we are fitting these plastic covers on the bodywork and two of the pipes, which will protect the new intake pipe and the original components. Connect the new pipe at the top first to the top intake and screw it in, attaching it with the Jubilee provided. Now this won't be accessible after fitting, so that's why the top one needs to be done first. Feed the pipe down through past the components that we've protected, as you can see here. Now we're ready to fit the new intercooler. We just need to take these fixings off the original one because we'll need them for the new one. We have an additional mounting bracket for the larger intercooler. Now it was actually easier to fit the intercooler with the hose attached to the intercooler first and not attached to the car first. However, it still was quite a squeeze. Now before starting the car with the new turbo fitted, we need to replace the oil for some 10W40. So we've just got a 17mm sump plug and the standard metal type oil filter. I didn't have a socket for this, and this one was very tight, so I had to use a strap tool to remove it. There wasn't an oil capacity stated anywhere, and there was no information available online. I got about 2.8 litres, so it seems that the oil capacity is somewhere around the 2.8 litres. Fitting the new filter. Now these don't need to be tight, this style of filter, they only need to be hand tight plus a quarter or a half of a turn. They don't need to be super tight, as they often are over tightened on many cars. Fit a new sump plug washer and tighten to 30 Newton meters. There also wasn't a figure for this, the torque requirement for the sump plug, but most cars take 30 Newton meters. Add the new oil, which I figured to be around 2.8 litres. Now we're ready for the first start. Don't be alarmed if you see a small amount of smoke coming from the engine bay. There will be contaminants burning off the manifold and the catalytic converter. Car away from the ramp, ready to use the HKS flash editor, which I will document in another video. I was having some issues using the software initially, so I'll make a video especially for the flash editor. Well, thanks for watching this part of the job. I hope you've already seen part 1, and please check out the next video and other videos for this car and many others.